Up next, we are trying something a little bit new, and I have no idea what to expect. We have 4 Silicon Valley executives, and I want to say that we're, in a sense, putting them in the ring together. Yeah, unscripted, uncensored, unbelievable. I have no idea in which direction this conversation will take us. So we're going to see where this goes. But let me introduce you to this panel. Jeff Bonforte, he is the Senior Vice President of Communications Products at Yahoo. He's formerly the CEO of Zobni, and as his Twitter profile actually states, he's living proof of the fallacy of first mover advantage.
Yeah.
It's a little research. Steve Yankovich is also joining him up here on the panel. He is the Vice President of Innovation and New Ventures at eBay. He's a self-proclaimed innovator, technologist, mobile car, watch, and cooking guy. And Gary Clayton is a former Yahoo and Tell Me executive who's now Chief Creative Officer of Nuance. They create speech recognition software. And Brian Wong, the co-founder and CEO of mobile advertising company Keep. Let's give them a really big, warm welcome, and all I'm going to say is take it from here.
Hello, hello. Hello. I just want to say thanks for having us. I'm very honored to be on the stage with these guys. I'm just going to wing it here. I think that one of the things we've seen so far today, the sort of the central theme with the educational and the healthcare, has been, in some ways, the democratization of technology and the resultant democratization of responsibility for our educations, for our healthcare. And I think it's a theme you see a lot across various industries in Silicon Valley and all over the world. So, opening statement?
No, it's actually a good point. If we see how tech companies actually are used to disruption, right? We're used to kind of getting beat up by each other, and one guy's up for 5 years, another guy's up for the next 5 years, and that's sort of normal. But if you look at things like healthcare and education, I've got trying to get my kids into school, and I always ask the same question: what will this school look like in 10 years or in 5 years? And they always look at me like I'm an asshole. They're always like, what kind of question is that? And I'm like, everything's changing around the world, and you guys have no idea. Like, are you going to be teaching differently? Are you going to be teaching different material? Are you guys making any adjustments? How do you actually change what you teach on an ongoing basis? And they just kind of look at me and say, we teach the same way we taught 10 years ago. We're going to teach the same way in 10 years from now. And I think that disruption will be more immense for society and how it changes as the software layer and this intelligence layer kind of drifts down into things that have not historically been disrupted so often by tech. And our responsibility on the software side, obviously, is to have a high level of patience, but all the necessary impatience that we always bring to almost anything that we do in the Valley, which is we're so anxious to get things moving and going, but with this new set of innovation, it really takes a new layer of patience as well, which is to persistently work on these things that may take 5 or 10 years and not 2 or 3 years.
So something I came to while watching this morning, we talked about the healthcare and that it's going to require us, right, the public, to demand the change so that the employers and the insurance and the community itself adjust and pivots like they should. Same for education, the parents have to demand it. I'm positive it's going to happen. And the reason is sort of what's gone on with mobile, because the smartphone acted as the catalyst for a change that people are demanding, or maybe it's an expectation. Gary and I were talking about earlier. Eric used the example of Uber. I use it all the time. That you take a thing we used to do in a clunky, frictionful way, you do it in what really is a magical way, everybody likes it better, no question. And now your expectation for everything else is, why don't you Uberify that, okay? And it's happened in my business. I started mobile at eBay, and it just grew like crazy. It's just unbelievable, these people that now do everything here and nothing in a traditional way on a normal screen. And that's why, I was telling Gary, I felt a little bad being a commerce guy because education and health is such a noble cause. And he told me, don't worry, because you make people happy when they buy stuff. And so,
and you're doing no harm.
Yeah, I'm doing no harm. So that's good. But it was very inspirational. But I think there's hope because of that. And one other thing I wanted to mention, which is another phenomenon that Eric mentioned, and most of us raised our hand. On a pedometer. And a couple years ago, you could ask everybody, 100 people, do you want a pedometer that talks to your smartphone? And half would go, what's a pedometer? And once you educate everybody, you're like, no, you'd probably get 99 no's, but yet the Fitbit comes out and people get it, you know, and they want it. And that's why I think that all these devices are going to take off. And it's just another example of the adoption just shrinking to almost no time. It's really crazy.
My two thoughts are that I think the mobilization of things is table stakes. We're going to have a lot of companies just mobilize and have things that are accessible through wearables and the phone. What I'm excited about is having the stuff almost have premonition, like being able to know what we want before we even know it, and be able to actually enhance our human limits. I think the funny thing is, looking at those demos, really the only thing that's clunky and limiting is us. Everything else is pretty much going to enhance our shortfalls. And so that's the stuff that gets me super excited. The other thing, on a more lighter note, is I hope this stuff starts to become a lot more sexier in terms of how it looks. You know, someone said that the Google Glass is like Segway for your face, right? And I think, you know, hopefully these things eventually look a little sexier. That's important. I mean, you know, these are the things that eventually make things adoptable by the masses. And so that gets me very excited.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. For Jawbone, for example, with their up bracelet, they've really sort of taken a lot of time to look at the aesthetics, to look at the style attributes to it when you're actually wearing it.
Yeah, it's not trivial stuff, right? And
that motorcycle helmet was pretty sick.
That was cool, yeah, but I don't ride a motorcycle, so hopefully it'll work for my
I'm trying
car.
to think if that would be uncool to just wear around.
Yeah.
Be like Daft Punk everywhere you go.
Exactly.
Sell advertising on
it.
Exactly.
So I'll make a prediction that eventually the form factor of Google Glass, I don't think will get wide adoption for that reason and others. I'll make a prediction that your glasses, that glass, by having something in the glass matrix that will look at the photons from the side, and those glasses you're going to wear anyway, right, become what Google Glass is.
I lost you at glasses. Photons from the side?
Yeah,
what does
yeah.
that do?
Well,
I'm learning.
We'll turn the translucent glass into a camera, essentially.
Whoa.
Right?
How about in the contact lenses? Do you think that's going to happen? Do you think we can have
I think it
this
could.
stuff into the contacts?
Absolutely. I really believe the wearable thing is going to move very fast.
Or in our optic nerve? How about in our optic nerve? Wasn't there a wearable? Reg, you told me about this thing that shoots lasers into people's retinas. And doesn't like make them see better, just puts the input of the visual signal into the actual retina, which is ridiculous. I don't know. I think this stuff would be embedded in our brain. I think the prediction here too is that this stuff gets closer and closer into our face, and then eventually past our face, inside. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But the proximity of the device will actually go closer and closer into the actual body, and then
I think they're going to be in the matrix, right? And they're going to all unplug, right? We'll go back the other way. So.
I'm going to miss the robot phase, though, because I was really looking forward to having a little sidekick.
The other thought I had is,
told me cool shit like in
did nobody watch?
Sidekick too, Jeff.
Beady, 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 Bonfrey, you're the best.
Did nobody watch the movie Terminator? Like, don't we know how this all ends? Like, it's Skynet. Hello, we're all going to end up being servants.
I like what you're saying though about you want something to anticipate what you want to need, and I think that's a real thing. I would like to actually, through the coming sensors and the connected home and the connected world around us, to create a virtual personal assistant. So, because a real personal assistant could actually anticipate and take care of things, and so that all the things that aren't really something you enjoy doing, like buying consumables, replacing the canned light that burned out, changing the filter in the fridge, whatever, just happens automatically.
This is a really hot area. The idea of personal assistant, moving into the realm of a personal advisor, being able to anticipate your needs, being able to anticipate your wants. It reminds me of the great Henry Ford quote that Steve Jobs was so fond of. If you ask people what they wanted, they'd ask for a faster horse. They really don't know what they want. They may not even know what they need. But if there are mechanisms for helping people understand and being able to explain that to them. So this idea of being sort of preemptory or being able to understand ahead of time what it is a user wants. I mean, that's basically the concept of the movie Her, right?
Yeah.
And this touches on something Jeff's last company at Zobni. The great line in there was, "How did you know so much about me?" And the Samantha character said, "Silly, I went through your email." I mean, there's all this data about us that remains sort of unleveraged, unharvested, much like, well, up here earlier we were talking a little, we touched a little bit on the idea of DNA, and all the information that it holds about us, but maybe the greatest external repository of information about us may be in our body of emails that we've collected over so many years. But being able to leverage all this unleverageable or unleveraged stuff so far, I think this is a theme that's sort of playing itself out in many different ways in the Valley. So you mentioned Uber. So Uber is a manifestation of leveraging unused cycles. These are limousine drivers that were just sitting around, and they figured out a way to sort of leverage this stuff. Airbnb, you're leveraging unused cycles. You've got property sitting there unused. Why not make this an efficiency play and go out and get that stuff and make a business out of it? I'm working with a company right now called Directly, and what they're doing is they're looking at all these subject matter experts who are just sitting around during their off hours and offering them an opportunity and a platform in which they can go and do customer service for people that can't get through to call center agents. And at the same time, call center agents are so expensive for the company, there's a win-win here. So this idea of being able to anticipate and to leverage these sort of unused cycles.
When I get most excited about startups, it's the ones that are pushing sort of the real science or the hardest questions. The whole explosion of mobile apps is sort of like a mixed blessing in some ways, because, you know, listen, there's a role for like yet another photo app, I'm sure, or yet another messaging product. But there's so much data that has been sitting there unanalyzed, it hasn't been looked at. So there's all this massive data sources out there. You know, I've been obsessed for now a decade at looking at what's in your inbox. But there is all this data out there, and what we really need are really smart people building really intelligent systems that can extract this data, because we do spend a fair amount of time thinking about how can we augment the human experience in real time. And that's actually the part of my life I enjoy the most. I don't really want massively augmented. I enjoy being here in the physical presence and not necessarily having extra screens constantly put on top of me. But there's an amazing amount of data that I would prefer not to have to spend effort to remind myself things I hear every day, things I see every day. So it's more that I really want my brain to focus on the now and be more present, which I feel like technology is not necessarily helping us exactly, and to relieve me of the burden of having to remember and recall, and instead spend my energy more sort of focusing out, looking both forward as well as in the present. And it's weird because you're using very advanced technology basically to spend time looking back, but it's a part of the world that I feel like we don't spend enough time trying to figure out how can we mine what has been passing us, bits are amazing at remembering, and yet we spend so much time trying to sort of predict. I'd much rather, the brain is actually really good at predicting. If you measure people's shoe selection, you can tell the weather better than you can if you have weather stations out, right? Humans are really good when they wake up at determining whether it'll rain that day, much better than a weather station. So it would just be interesting for me to constantly see more and more of companies that are doing amazing things with data sources that otherwise look mundane, or data that's passing by us every day that we're just not collecting. And the rise of technology, to a certain extent, is really just the rise of sensors. As sensors become cheaper and more prevalent, technology makes massive advances.
So it's those sensors, I think, that will bypass the data we have. You know, eBay's got 16 years of data on many of you, right? And PayPal as well.
Yeah, can I get access to that?
Yeah, you can. But I can't.
This is not the open world I was promised.
But this is the problem. I can't get to it either, because there's a ton of data where we could anticipate. This is being
recorded right now.
It's okay.
We have access to it.
But this is the problem. Big companies are not utilizing their data like they should. It's inherently hard, and so I think we'll bypass it. And sometimes the real-time data you're collecting is even more interesting. I mean, I had a friend that took up tennis at 50, and his historic commerce data wouldn't tell you that you ought to merch him
I could totally
tennis
predict
stuff,
that.
right?
I could totally predict
well, you track where he is. He parks at a parking lot.
American Express gave me this great. I was talking to. It turns out he ends up being on the Yahoo board, so not anymore. But John Haney.
John Hayes, yeah.
Yeah. So I got to talk when I was a Zobni. I don't know why. Anyway, we were talking and we were saying, oh, you know, with the email we can do this, we can predict this. And he said, you know, at American Express, we know 2 years before a divorce will happen, well before the marriage reports it's in distress. So before either member of the marriage will report that they're considering a divorce, we can predict it. And we can predict whether or not a store we can predict the revenue per square foot of most stores by location in the mall or in any part of the city within like one address number. So they can tell you should you be on the left side of the Coach store or the right side to maximize sales. And they sell this service to retailers. When Coach Bags wants to open a store, they tell them the exact spot in which they'll maximize revenue. And it was unbelievable. None of us sort of were aware of the sort of amount of information that they had at American Express. But I do think that that was one thing where you'd say like, oh, the historical look back won't help him play tennis better. But it certainly could have alerted us that he would be a prime suspect to love tennis. I mean, there are all sorts of very, very light
that's just
signals.
American Express, which is just one data source. I mean, if you think about all the stuff that you had,
no, we had way more than American Express. It made me instantly want to go find out who's going to get divorced.
Can I say the big opportunity is actually connecting the people who we don't think that we think we're very special, but I think when you look at the data, we're all very connected in many ways. If we can connect those silos and say, what are the pre, current, and post actions from every single person on the planet? Google's probably the closest to this right now, where they can see your to-dos, your email, your calendar, where you're going via maps and your search, and then actually connect those overlapping patterns and know what you're going to do after. I think those connecting of those silos is the big opportunity. And the privacy concerns, let's just almost pretend those don't exist for at least 3 seconds and realize that the opportunity of connecting just the patterns of pre, current, and post, I think is the massive opportunity. And so you talk about in the present, I think we want to be serviced now. We're obsessed with instant gratification. In fact, the Uberification of things is really about spoiling us and having us expect everything now. You know, it's like the differentiation between Uber, Lyft, and Sidecar. Well, I don't even know if they're relevant anymore, but those companies is availability, right? And there's no loyalty to one. It's just, okay, if it's more than 5 minutes, forget about it. I'm going to change to the next service. And so I think we're very spoiled. And so the ability for technology to enable now is important, but the ability to look at the past data to inform that now is very important. But then also, and this wouldn't be appropriate without pitching, or not pitching, but plugging something that we've done, is we're all about moments. And actually, one of the things we did with a relay portfolio company, Mogio, Jay, if you're here, put up your hand. But the idea was to take connected car moments. So if we know, for example, your oil is going to need changing, serendipitously, you could get rewarded with a free oil change from Midas. So the idea is to not only know that you need something, but actually address those needs. So for marketers as well, it's less about real-time marketing. We actually feel it's about real-time needs addressing now. And we have the ability to do that so real-time because of all the signals that are coming from these sensors that the game will change entirely.
I feel like we're headed down this path of we're all getting much smarter, but we're still far from being smart. And you know, when you see a system that says it's the smart this, that, and the other, all the cars that were smart in the 80s that had all these terrible systems, and they were all just terrible. They made life much worse. Like
they have to tell you they're smart.
The Chrysler LeBaron, they would like tell you your seatbelt is on. You're like, cool, thanks for that.
Although they teach you on planes on how to put your seatbelt on now.
That's cool, the car's in park, thanks, man. And I just feel like we're headed for like a decade of really not smart stuff where everyone's telling us, this is an intelligent service, it knows exactly what you want to eat. You're like, that is not what you had no idea I was getting high 7 minutes ago, did you? Because that is not at all what I want to eat. That may be what I should want to eat, but it is not what I want to eat right now.
To your point about incoming data and real-time data, I think one of the ways you can
maybe
get real
they should
smart...
have been watching me earlier 7 minutes and then be predicting marshmallows.
Oh, I think one way you think about how you might want to get smart is watching kids. Is watching incoming data from kids, watching how they work with something, and there's no rules, or if there are rules, they don't understand them. It's just free form. Their plastic heads, their plastic minds, how they get around all this stuff and how they get right to what they want to do. And technology is rarely, it's not an impediment because it's just something that they're interacting with and they don't know what an impediment is.
My son walked into the library, there was a mouse, and he goes, hey, Mommy, can I learn how to use that? She's like, sure. And he like sat down, he tried using it, and then he started touching the monitor. And she goes, you can't touch the monitor, you only use the mouse. And he was like, well, that's stupid. Yeah. He literally was like, I'm out. That makes no sense whatsoever.
So what's interesting about my kids, teenagers, 2 of them, is they really don't have any switching cost in their mind to all the things they're doing that I feel switching costs for, whether it's Facebook or Twitter or where Instagram and all these things you're doing. Even though it's work, they don't view it really as work, and I think it's interesting. And the big franchises, I think, if they don't watch and figure out how to be relevant for the kids now that are just growing up in this world, that they can be toppled very easily.
I predict I'll be a grumpy old man technologist in another 6 months.
Kids! Well, I had an old man moment once, and that was, sorry, we were at a concert, for Imagine Dragons, actually, and I was trying to watch, and Imagine Dragons attracts a younger demographic. I'm 23 now, or I'm turning 23 next weekend, but there was like a lot of 17-year-old girls, and so I was definitely at the wrong concert. Yeah, I know. I really like Imagine Dragons, but they were all consuming they were looking at the concert through their phones, right? They were Snapchatting and Instagramming.
Right?
Yeah, they're just looking through everything through their phone. And I was like, just use your eyeballs, like that. Just watch the concert through your eyeballs, which is kind of overrated now, I guess. It's like the phone will see it first. And then I'll see it, right? It's very frustrating.
In camera's defense, I was on vacation in December with my family in like a motorhome, which was miserable. And I kept thinking, I'm paying for this. But at the exact moment, I was really pissed because my son was screaming, my daughter was pissed, she didn't want to be in her car seat anymore, my wife was telling me, I was like, that's just unbelievably painful vacation. But I took a picture, and then I looked at it like 7 minutes later, I'm like, oh God, remember back then? That was amazing. Like, it was so beautiful. Like, all the misery just wipes away, and when I look at it on the screen, I'm like, oh, those kids are so cute.
I'm surprised that you made that comment about not using technology, the smartphone in that moment. I'm fascinated when I go to a restaurant and you'll see a couple and they're sitting there at a restaurant and both of them are staring at their screen.
Don't judge me, man.
To me it's like, I'm not even sure
I've known my wife for
are
a
you
long
eating
time.
your food through
Very
your phone
rarely
too?
does she pull something out that I'm like, wait, I'm sorry, what was that?
Or
Heard
taking
every
pictures of the
story
food.
already. She's killing me.
Yeah, the pictures of the food I can understand, but do that.
The social norms, maybe there's starting to be bars now where you basically shouldn't be taking your phone out. They want you to have conversation, and I think that's the norm. Hopefully, that we could teach our kids is that it is this will make us acceptable and accessible. It's not acceptable to be constantly accessible.
I'm gonna watch
I think.
Secret right now. And
Yeah, exactly.
You guys are posting shit.
But yeah, they're like, I don't think it is.
First time I used the app, I was at dinner with 9 other technologists, and literally, it was constant. Your friend just said, that Jeff Barford doesn't eat normally, and I'm like, God,
Yeah, is it already on Secret?
Man.
Yeah.
You can't do this on
Are we gonna
Secret.
start talking about Secret too now? I don't think we have enough time. But I think how many of you guys
That's how I
actually
learned
like
I'm
the
gonna get
fact
fired,
that
man. This is
how much
the best.
time do you guys like actually be on a flight and it doesn't have Wi-Fi? Like actually liking it's
United
great.
Airlines, when are they ever going to...
Well, no, I actually like it when there isn't Wi-Fi
man,
because
I
then you're
gotta
not
have
expected to be.
You guys really are grumpy.
Yeah. We're just getting.
World problems.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. You guys
Are
need
we-
to get us out of here, right?
Are we
That thing was
overstaying
zero
our
22
welcome?
minutes ago.
Yeah. All right. Thank you guys.
All right.
Thanks, folks.
Applause.